Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen, and with us for our program today, Assemblywoman Claudia Tenney. Claudia Tenney represents the 101st Assembly District in New York State. That's an assembly district that starts up in the northern end, Oneida, Herkimer, Otsego counties, and makes its way south through Sullivan, Ulster, Orange, and Delaware.
You got it.
Yeah,
you are so good at this now.
I'm trying. It's an incredible district.
It's the only statewide assembly district that we have.
It pretty much goes from the northern end to the southern end of the state, and we are grateful to have you here to talk with us about what's going on at the state capitol. We've got a lot to get to.
Yes, it's been a big, exciting week.
Time is a-wasting. We're going to be talking today about proposed changes to the way the assembly does its business and its operating rules. We're going to be talking about the budget negotiations and how that's going here, and I don't know that it's going all that well, frankly. So we've got a lot to do, but first we're going to start with the good stuff, and you had people visiting.
Yes, I did.
Representatives of the ARC came to town, and I think that cut's ready. So why don't we just start with that for the program?
Super.
We'll take a look at that introduction as it made its way on the floor of the New York State Assembly, and then we'll be back to talk about all that other stuff with Assemblywoman Claudia Tenney.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity to interrupt the proceedings today to introduce a very special group of people from the Ulster Green ARC. They've come down every year to advocate. First, we have the Executive Director, John McHugh, not to be confused with the Secretary of the Army. The Communications Manager is Melissa Paradis. Luis Macia, Residential Shift Supervisor. Ann Elliott, a self-advocate and a constituent. Jean Mary Shields, a self-advocate and also someone who's going to be celebrating her birthday this week. And Bojena Kowalska, who's also a residential specialist. And last but not least, we have Brett Benson, who's a self-advocate, first time here. Thank you so much, and I hope that you please extend the courtesies of the House today for this very special group who've given us a very compelling reason to go to budget hearings to make sure they get the adequate funding they need. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
On behalf of Ms. Tenney, the Speaker, and all the members, we welcome you also here to the New York State Assembly, the People's House, and we extend to you the privileges of the floor. We commend you on your advocacy and work that you're doing here today. And did I hear there's a birthday person out there somewhere? You want to, well, you're one day behind me, so I'm happy. Aquarians are forever. Thank you so very much, and welcome here.
That is terrific. And anybody who knows anything about the ARCs in your own community know what a great job they do.
Yeah, that was a really great day. In fact, I dragged them all the way down from the LOB through the concourse, got on the elevator, and when we opened the door to the Capitol, they all were like, oh, it was so beautiful. And they said, are all state capitals this beautiful? And really, we have one of the most beautiful state capitals. It's breathtaking. And they were just so thrilled to be in the chamber. And they were great. They made a great case to me about funding and the problems we've had in the past with funding the people with special needs. Many people don't realize, Article 17, Section 4, I've read it, talks about our obligation as members of the State Assembly and the government to provide for people with special needs. And I think people forget that's actually in our Constitution. And the state Constitution, I recommend reading it to our viewers, is a lot different than our federal Constitution, which sets forth more of a general guideline. The state talks about education, funding of people with special needs. Those are very, very important parts of our budgeting process that we're struggling with today. So
not only should people read the Constitution, but you and I do take for granted every day the fact that we are here in this beautiful building at the state capitol. And if you're ever in the Albany area and driving through if you're like Claudia Tenney and driving through a district that goes right around the Albany area, you should stop in and see it. Make a day trip of it. It is one beautiful thing. They have tours, and you'll be happy that you did.
I walk through the Capitol when I go to session every day, just because I like to see all the different. There's the flag room that's in honor of our military and people that have served for years. It's really it's a splendid building. It really is beautiful.
There's a lot of history. There's the Hall of Governors there, and there have been a lot of famous people that have been governor of the state of New York. There is. a lot of history. A lot of the European stone carvers came over here and did some of their finest work. So
yes,
honestly,
and I always bring people to show the little gremlin that's over there, over by the Dunkin' Donuts.
There's gremlin, there's famous people, there's historical figures.
It's great.
There are family members of the stonecutters themselves. I mean, you name it. It's just a phenomenal thing, and so please do that. But we digress.
Yes, but we both share our love of the Capitol.
You made an interesting point when you were introducing your friends from the ARC there, that it was that the day they were here an important time for them to be here, as budget hearings were going on at the state capitol. The hearings are done. The Assembly and Senate this week will be passing their own versions of a budget proposal, so there will be a governor's budget proposal, an Assembly budget proposal, a Senate budget proposal, and now the talks really start to get serious, right? Yes,
well, that's the horse trading of the state budget, which is an unusual year this year for the state budgeting process. We've got the governor kind of putting us in a constitutional trap, as it were, and that means that we've got to come up with our own solutions, and quite possibly we could be rejecting many of the issues that the governor has. And I add right away, one of the biggest problems, probably the biggest voice that I've heard from, are the teachers. Not just the teachers, and this is not, it's administrators, teachers, students, parents. Everybody is in an uproar over what's going on with the governor's budget for education. And there are rallies being staged all over, and you can say, well, the teachers complain every year. That's true. However, this year is unusual. The governor has really taken a shot at teaching instead of, I think, going in and solving the problem that we have with education and looking at true reform. He's basically blamed everybody for not having proper education. Now he's adding a layer of bureaucracy to go in and to second guess what our administrators and teachers are doing in their local school districts. He's doubling down on this testing that has become so injurious to our children and really just duplicative. It's not something that looks like it's necessary. I mean, there's just a whole new round of very expensive ideas that the governor is throwing on this. He's pushing charter schools over the public school system, and some may advocate charter schools in different areas, but I think in our public education system, when you create a charter, and I'm not saying there's not a case for them, maybe there is, I personally think that when you put two funded government entities against each other, you're not going to have a good combination. So we need to resolve some of that issue. But the governor just loves to put a wedge between people instead of really resolving problems. And I think that has become the biggest sore this year as far as what I've seen in budgeting. So
it's interesting because he seems to do that. The governor seems to like to do that a lot, where he pits like-minded people against each other to compete for things. He does that with his economic development programs.
And the one thing,
communities, towns, villages have to compete.
Everything is this so-called competitive situation, which I think is code for politics. It gives the governor the chance to decide to pick winners and losers in every arena, and I think that's wrong. It's exactly what we shouldn't be doing. We should be going back to objective standards, allow the taxpayers to make the decisions, stop taking taxpayer money and funding it into these, crony capitalists, crapitalists, whatever you want to call them, schemes that give the governor the opportunity to have more power than he really should have. We have this very dominant executive right now who's really just trying to minimize the role of the legislature, and we're a representative government, and he's trying to remove that ability from us to represent the taxpayers, and in the end, who loses? The taxpayers and our children.
One of the things that's clear here at the state capitol is there are a lot of people, legislators along with the governor, who thinks that the educational services provided here in New York could be improved. There's a lot of
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of results
we
that
can
are
all
not
improve everywhere, including the state assembly.
But the governor, as you said, has tied the amount of funding that would go from the state, from Albany to the local school districts, and says, well, it'll be this amount unless you pass my ideas for education reform, and then we'll send you a lot more.
Hostage taking, extortionary. I'm not saying extortion, but it's extortionary. It's not the way to run government.
Because there's a lot of different ideas here in Albany as to how to go about achieving the results of improving education.
Right, and the governor has proven it again, repeatedly. It's my way or the highway. Much like the SAFE Act, all these issues, Unsafe Act, I'll get corrected, but it's all these things that he's just trying to force through, really brute force, through just his domineering style. And I just think it's It's destructive to New York State government, and all the statistics prove it. We're the least friendly state as far as business. We have some of the highest taxes, second highest energy costs. I mean, everything is just in a state of disarray in New York, and yet he has all these possibilities in front of him. We have great people who are out there thinking and coming up with solutions, and he dismisses everyone. I mean, except for his own apparent superiority to the rest of us. I'm trying to put it nicely.
You're not really doing a very good job.
Oh, I'm being very nice.
In our last couple of minutes here,
Yeah.
just yesterday as we sit here and tape this program, you and your colleagues stood up in the Assembly and said, you know, we should change the rules. It's our opportunity now. We've got a new speaker. We've got a new direction, we're told, here in the Assembly. We can really change the way we do things.
Right.
So you put up a bunch of ideas, term limits, not working past midnight, all these different things that have been talked about over the years. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to do this or we could do this? You didn't get much success with that.
This, I have to say, of all my 5 years, my fifth session, yesterday was one of the most discouraging days that I've had in the State Assembly. It went completely unreported, almost completely. Bill Mahoney did a quick thing in the newspaper, but really just a mention of Mickey Kearns being a Democrat who voted against it. But it is a tragedy that these reforms that were put in yesterday were flatly denied by the majority. And we had an opportunity with a new speaker. They claimed there was a reform caucus that burst out of that said we caused the destruction of Sheldon Silver and we're putting these reforms forward. Nearly every one of the reforms that they proposed, actually I think every one and more, were proposed yesterday, and they summarily voted them down. Every single member of that reform caucus voted down reforms. And these reforms were not partisan. They were common sense ideas passed by the bipartisan state Senate in New York, passed by legislatures throughout the country. You know, really common sense things to move away from this virtual dictatorship that we have in the State Assembly, which, by the way, many of the Democrats complain about. We can't get our bills to the floor. We don't have adequate funding or equal or fair funding for our staff to really do the job that we need for constituents. Huge inequities in that. We proposed all of the changes that everybody could possibly complain about, and yet they summarily voted them down. And it was tragic. I think it was a huge opportunity missed, and I don't know if they're going to come back with some kind of reform, but New York stands out. We still stand out as one of the most dysfunctional legislatures for this very reason. Now, we can go back and say, yes, Sheldon Silver's finally gone. We can now reform. Sheldon Silver's gone. He's not the speaker. And yet we did not do one thing to reform or change the Assembly, to make it more transparent, to make it better for our residents. And the worst part of it all, where's the media? The media acted as a lapdog, not a watchdog, to the people, and that to me was the saddest statement yesterday.
I tell you, I was a little surprised to see the comments from the majority leader during that debate that said simply,
horrified.
We're the majority. We are here to govern. We are here to run the place. The minority is here to dissent. And that's that.
Right, and by the way, it went further than that. He basically said, we can't govern, we don't have time, we can't listen to your voices. We've got important work to do. You're not important to that conversation. I was actually shocked because I have a lot of respect for him, but boy, yesterday, I know he was reading it, but who was writing that, and why would you read such a thing if you really believed in the Constitution and you really believed in a constitutional republic, which we have, and democratic principles? It was really astounding.
If you folks watching want to reach out to your representative here and express to her your thoughts on what's going on here at the state capitol, feel free to do that. And here's how you would. You contact Claudia Tenney at her office in New Hartford. You can dial 736-3879 or drop an email. That's probably the easiest thing to do at tennyc@assembly.state.ny.us. And as we thank Claudia Tenney for joining us, and we'll be picking this conversation up as we continue on through the budget talks here at the state capitol, we want to thank you folks too. And we'll hope to see you all soon for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.